Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm thrilled that you're with us today, and it's going to be a great show. I'm excited that this month, due to it being Alzheimer's and Caregiving, the national month of celebration for both of these, I have Sherri Snelling joining us. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Sherri in a bit. But I always like to start out the show letting people know who Alzheimer Speaks is and what we're about. Again, I'm Lori LeBay, and I'm the founder of Alzheimer Speaks. And basically, I got into this industry because of my mother, who has been suffering with memory loss for over 30 years. And in so many ways, it's been a blessing. And I am now all about connecting people to resources and giving hope and trying to remove the fear that stagnates so many of us. Alzheimer Speaks as a company is really an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort. So we have this radio platform. We have a blog. We do webinars called Dementia Chats. We do a lot of training, both live and long distance. And then we have a resource directory. And again, we're all about trying to help people connect the dots and give them support, have these everyday conversations about the disease so we can get it out of the closet and on the table and remove the isolation that is so sad about this disease. We truly believe by joining forces and sharing knowledge, and again, just having these everyday conversations about dementia, that we can remove the stigmas associated to memory loss and help people live purpose-filled lives if they're diagnosed with dementia or if they're caring for someone with dementia. At our core, we believe collaboratively we really are going to win this battle. But again, it's going to take all of us, and I have been absolutely amazed at all our audience has done for us here at Alzheimer Speaks. Your clicks, your likes of the radio show, of our Facebook pages, of our blog and our website have just helped so much in terms of getting the word out and offering others information and a resource to go when dealing with this disease. Because most of us are pretty shocked how many people in our lives are actually struggling. But this is a conversation that isn't had. And so by you just sharing basic information about this radio show or our blogs or our dementia chats where we interview people living with the disease, it can be life-changing for those who haven't had an outlet. So I really urge you to continue that. And I know the power that has because I have the honor of being named the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's according to Sharecare and Dr. Oz. And Sherri Snelling, who is going to be with me today, is also one of the top 10 experts named by Sharecare. She was #3. So we totally understand and appreciate the power of working collaboratively and having, again, just these everyday conversations about the disease. If you haven't visited our website, I would encourage you to go there. It's just alzheimersspeaks.com. So that's 2 S's in the middle and 1 at the end. And there you'll find all types of information. Today on the show, like any other show, you can utilize your chat box to join the conversation. I'll be reviewing that throughout the show, or you can always call in live and pose a question or make a comment. And that number is 714-364-4757. Again, that's 714-364-4754, and just push 1, and you will, you know what, I said that number wrong. It's 714-364-4757. And just push 1, you will get into my queue, and from there, when there's a break in the conversation, I'll pull you in to join us. Because again, Alzheimer's Speaks is about raising everyone's voice. And it doesn't, make any difference if you're a professional or if you're a family member or if you're a person diagnosed. Everybody's voice is valued here. Now, many times people ask, and so this is going to kind of be a little brief commercial of where do I go to get some additional support in my community? And the Alzheimer's Disease International Association is the association of all Alzheimer's associations worldwide. And so if you're looking for an association in your neck of the woods, I would recommend that you go to Alzheimer's Disease International. We are such a global community now. Maybe you're not looking for one for yourself, but for a parent or for a friend, this is really an easy way to go ahead and find them. Plus, they have tons of great information out there. I'd also like to do a shout-out to Music First with Choral Health. Music is so powerful. I'm just a big, big believer in the power of music and the emotional ties that it has. The way it can help us change our moods. You've probably all cried in the car or laughed or thought of a fond memory when a song has triggered an emotion in you. This doesn't go away when we have dementia. And so music can be a really, really powerful, powerful tool. And Music First is one that you can actually download onto your iPhones. Or you can, go to the website and get more information. You don't have to just use the app either. The Alzheimer's Studies is a trial because a lot of times people want to get involved and try to make a difference. And by partaking in a trial study, this one happens to be for Tau and Tangles, and just go to the alzheimersstudies.com, or you can go to the Alzheimer's team on Facebook. Then there are also several different types of dementias, and I won't get into all of them, but I am going to highlight a few different associations because, you do have to call on different skill sets and different information. And so in addition to the Alzheimer's Association, there's the Lewy Body Dementia Association, the Association for Frontal Temporal Lobe, and there's one for vascular dementia as well. And so, and for aphasia is another one where people have trouble with their words. These are all great, great resources. The Purple Angel Project is the new global symbol started by Norms McNamara over in the UK that's starting to catch fire here in the U.S. as well, and I'm really excited to be part of that project. Again, we need to come together and start using the same language, the same symbols, if we're going to make a difference. And then if you're looking just for some things for activities, Puzzle with Me is a great opportunity, or the Jiminy Wicket program where you can play croquet is a wonderful, wonderful route to be able to share and engage. Last, I want to give a shout-out to Sharecare, again, and for those of you that don't know who Sharecare is, they are a health and wellness social media platform that connects people with top-ranking experts ranging from doctors to specialists to hospitals to healthcare companies and health-conscious consumers. And the power of this site is really very unique because it's all about a question and answer format and, again, gathering that collective wisdom and sharing. And this site was created by Dr. Oz and Jeff Arnold, who also partnered with Harpo Studios, that's Oprah, for those of you that don't know, Sony Pictures and the Discovery Communications. So if you haven't checked out Sharecare.com, I would highly, highly recommend that you do that. You can peruse that site all day long and not get through it. There's just great information there. So let me go ahead and introduce my co-host and guest, Sherri Snelling. Sherri has been with us before, and she really just is a joy. She is just one of those people that I have never met her in person, but my guess is when you walk into a room with her, she would light it up, because that's just what she does in conversation when I've talked to her by phone. She has this great energy and insight and wisdom and compassion that just kind of oozes out of her. And Sherri is the CEO and founder of the Caregiving Club. She's also the author of a wonderful book that's quite interesting called A Cast of Caregivers, and that's about celebrity stories to help you prepare to care. She is a nationally recognized expert on America's 65 million family caregivers, with a special emphasis on how to help caregivers balance self-care while caring for a loved one. And Lord knows we all need help with that. Even when we think we have it under control, it starts slipping away from us. It's one of those really subtle things that happens. Sherri is a caregiving contributor for the Huffington Post, Forbes.com, USA Today, Weekend Magazine, PBS and Next Avenue, The Examiner, Maria Shriver, the Alzheimer's Association, more, and Empower Her, and many others. Again, very, very well recognized woman. She is the creator of Me Time Monday, which is weekly videos in support of nonprofit Healthy Mondays campaign, and the creator and producer of a cable program called Handle with Care. Sherri was recently recognized, again with me, as one of the top 10 influencers by Sharecare for Alzheimer's. And I know that she feels that that's a huge honor, as do I, and it's just been kind of an amazing ride. She's also the former chairman of the National Alliance for Caregiving, and the leading caregiving advocacy nonprofit organization based in Washington. And she served on caregiving advisory councils for the White House, Middle Task Force, and the United Nations International Caregiving Summit. So what can I say? This woman really knows what she's talking about, and she's making a difference. So welcome, Sherri. How are you today?
I'm great, Lori, and I just want to, thank you so much for those kind words of introduction, and tell your listeners that it's always such a privilege to be on your show, and, I just love what you're doing and love to join you in getting the word out and getting good information and good resources and helping as many people as we can. So thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I'm really excited. I've never had a true co-host for quite a while. Rick Phelps used to join me when I first started this, who was with Memory People on Facebook, and that just got a little bit more difficult between schedules and things, and so I've been doing this by myself for quite a while now. So it's going to be nice to share the platform with you this month. So thank you for taking the time to be part of Alzheimer's Speaks. With that, to start out, we might as well give people a better idea of who the heck Sherri Snelling is and what you're up to. So I'm going to pose a few questions to you, if you don't mind, and hopefully I don't blindside you at all. But,
Sure.
You wrote about caregiving tipping points for the PBS Next Avenue. And, can you tell us a little bit about what are caregiving tipping points?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I write for so many different outlets, as you were naming them off there, and, on a variety of different subjects. And one of the ones that really resonated with readers, and we got so many wonderful comments and lots of feedback, was this whole notion of, we know so much about caregiving, and we know, what it entails. But what is that point that you come to when you're in the midst of caregiving where you just realize, you know what, I just may not be able to do this anymore, or I may need more help, or something's got to change. And it's a variety of factors that bring you to that point. But that's really what, kind of prompted me to want to write this article about what are those tipping points. And, of course, we know, you read the statistic, 65 million Americans are caregivers right now, and that really represents, amazingly, one out of every three households in the U.S. has a caregiver living under its roof, which is pretty staggering when you think about it. We also know, again, talking more specifically about Alzheimer's and dementia, 15 million Americans are caring for someone with dementia. And so, we all go through this caregiving process differently. It's very personal and very unique to us. And so it's hard to put a blanket statement on what the tipping point is going to be for everyone, and it is different. And so I wrote this article and basically broke down the areas that I found in talking to caregivers across the country and different experts that are these tipping points. And they kind of fall into several buckets. One is the physical challenges, which we can talk a little bit more about. The second bucket is more around safety challenges for both you and your loved one. And the third bucket is around behavioral challenges. And, I can take your listeners through each of those, but those are kind of the three areas that we find people hit a wall and decide, you know what, I really need more help, or I need a change somehow in helping me care for my loved one.
Which is really, really true. Those really are the three biggies: the physical, the safety, and the behavioral. Now, I'm going to ask you to break away from this for just a second, because the other thing I wanted to have you tell our listeners about, because I think a lot of people don't know about the PBS Next Avenue platform.
Sure.
Can you just speak to why that is a good resource for people, and then we can jump back into the tipping points a little bit more?
Absolutely. Well, I was so thrilled to be asked to contribute articles to this website. It is a PBS backed and supported effort. And what they decided to do, and it actually came out of the Minneapolis Public Television Group, and they saw that the boomers obviously have specific things happening within that demographic, and caregiving being one of those things. And they decided to launch this website as an online place for people to gather, to get good information about what's happening, to people who are 50 plus. And they really positioned it as very similar to what they did with Sesame Street with children. That became a place to educate, as well as, kind of provide some good entertainment and information. And that's what Next Avenue is. That is the site now for boomers, in the same way they did Sesame Street. So they've got great articles, lots of really, really good information. And if you haven't visited the site, it's nextavenue.org. And resources with links. They've got great videos. There's a lot of excerpts from a variety of different PBS programs that have been done. One recently that was really poignant was on assisted living and what's happening in that arena. So I really encourage people to check it out, because it is a wonderful resource to visit and get really good information.
Okay, great. Thank you for just explaining that, because I always like, again, for people to know about different resources available, and I think it's good to hear from other people instead of just me blabbing away. Different perspectives there. So thank you. So can you take us through each of the tipping points and what we should look out for when we're giving care, when we're a caregiver or a care partner? What are some of the signs?
Sure. Well, as we said, these tipping points, that famous poster that we all see, keep calm and carry on, I think that's kind of the mantra of most caregivers. Every day we get up and we instill ourselves with strength and stamina and the courage to keep going. But there comes a day and there comes a point where you just feel overwhelmed and you feel like, oh, my gosh, I may not be able to do this. And so some of the reasons why, let's start with the physical challenges. I think it's intuitive, but we don't think about it enough. And it's simple things like helping your loved one walk or lifting them. And particularly, if they have fallen, this becomes a serious problem for both the person you're caring for, whether it's your parent or your spouse or perhaps even a sister or brother, but also yourself. One of the reports that I referenced in my article is that 52% of the back problems and muscle pulls and aches and injuries that occur for caregivers are occurring because they're lifting a loved one off the floor who has fallen, or they're transferring them perhaps from, say, like a wheelchair into the bed, or, doing some type of transfer to help them bathe or whatever. So it's a physical problem for both, as I said, the loved one who has fallen and maybe then suffers more injuries, but also the caregiver. So it's something we really need to think about when we get into caregiving and we realize, okay, mom or dad needs so much more help. And, if you're 130 or 140-pound woman and you've got a 200-pound dad that you need to lift, that's just not going to work. So it is an important issue, and it is one where a lot of caregivers find they do need extra help, and whether that help comes in the form of, some type of in-home care, a home health aide, or someone that can help, or even perhaps that's the point we need to have the discussion with mom or dad about, for safety reasons, I don't know if we can continue having you live in the home. What can we do? Let's map out a plan and have that discussion. And I know those are tough conversations to have. We talked about that. And then if you do help a loved one who has fallen, because we're in a panic when we see our mom on the floor in a heap, the first thing you want to do is lift her and help her. But you have to use proper technique. And, this is something that, again, it goes back to kind of the old exercise days. When you think about the Olympics, I always think about the Olympics and those wonderful weightlifters, who are getting those huge dumbbells over their head. Well, think about that in the sense of how you lift someone. What you never want to do is bend over from the waist and then lift up. You have to bend with your knees. So you definitely have to be really careful about that. You don't want to twist, so you have to be in the proper position. And you have to make sure you have a firm grip and let your leg muscles do most of the work. So, there are some great, videos that are out there on YouTube, and there's also great visuals that are on some websites. Agingcare.com is one that I saw that had some good information that shows you visually how to properly lift someone. So I really encourage caregivers to think about that dynamic in terms of just the physical challenges of lifting a loved one that you may have to do. And that's one of the physical.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, I'm 54, and I don't know what happened to my body in this last year, but I have lost muscle mass and toning, and probably because I don't exercise like I should. But I have gotten so weak, and I used to be just a bulldog. I mean, I used to be so strong, and but in my mind still thinks I am, and then I go to do something, and it's like, holy crap, I'm starting to have lower back problems, and I mean, I just feel it all over, and I know that I need to do some stretching and really start exercising and tone my muscle, because my mind still thinks I'm a 20-year-old kid that can, lift a truck, and I can't. And
right.
the littlest things, like you said, with turning, and the things that we took for granted, we can't anymore. So we have to be more conscientious about caring for ourselves so that we can care better for others, because I see so many people get physically hurt in these roles. And and also knowing when it's time to ask for help, to say, you know what, I just can't do this. This isn't safe for me. And if you go down as a caregiver, you're not just pulling yourself down, you're pulling both of you down. And I don't think there's a caregiver out there that wants that to happen. And so to protect that, sometimes we have to say we need help, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and I know how you feel. I always have felt, again, that I've been in pretty good physical shape, but lately my knees are just not working like they used to. So when I say to people, you've got to bend your knees, I know that could be something where your listeners are rolling their eyes going, yeah, right, because I even have trouble now bending down into more of that squat position. I'll tell you a personal story. My dad was recently in hospice care, and unfortunately we lost him a couple of months ago, but we had him at home. That's where he wanted to be, and we honored that wish for him. But he was a big man. He was 6'3", and even though he had lost some weight with his illness, he was still about 200 or 210 pounds. And he was very obstinate, as we all know. A lot of our loved ones could be. Didn't like the hospital bed that we had for him at home and insisted on, sleeping in his own bed. And all of that sounds fine and probably very familiar to a lot of caregivers out there. But the problem was one night he rolled over and fell out of bed. Well, my stepmom is a tiny little thing. I mean, she probably weighs 115 pounds soaking wet. I'm a lot bigger and stronger than that. But between myself, she called me, and I just live, down the street. So I ran over there. And then my brother was also at home, my younger brother, who's a big, strong guy. But between the three of us, we could not lift him off the floor. And this is the kind of thing, it doesn't sound that bad when you get into caregiving, but let me tell you, when you're facing that and your loved one's in pain and he was moaning and he had hit his head on the dresser and it was bleeding, I mean, you're just in an emotional panic, you're in distress. In that instance, we had to call 911 to get the paramedics to come over to help lift him. But these are the tipping points for caregivers, and we continue to figure out resolutions to keep him at home. But sometimes this is the point when your loved one isn't terminal like my dad was, and they may be living at home for a long time or want to live at home for a long time, but is it safe? And what can you do then to make it safer so that you can avoid some of these things? So that's just an example of what happens in this kind of area of falling and not being able to lift your loved one.
And what's hard, too, is that we all tend to make these promises that, I'm never going to place you and I will always take care of you. And we say that when people are healthy. And then we forget that the circumstances have greatly changed. And safety has to come first, in my opinion. I mean, for all parties. And that doesn't mean that you love somebody less. That really, that's kind of that unconditional, tough love. And, sometimes I think it's almost harder on us than it is on them, depending on the stage a person is in. It can be a rough adjustment. But if you end up having to place or pull in some home care support, and as long as you don't abandon them, you're still there. I really think you can work through that. But it's that scary, scary piece of letting somebody down and feeling not good enough. And, if you're doing the best you can, that's all you can expect.
Well, you bring up a really, really important point, Lori, and it's something I know you and I have talked about, and I write about this in my book, and it really goes back to that core caregiving conversation. It is so critical to have. It's easy to say and hard to do. It's a tough one, when you have parents who don't want to face maybe their own mortality and their own aging issues. They don't want to admit to it. They don't want to burden you as the adult child. And yet it's so crucial. And you're right in saying, so often, and I talk to a lot of caregivers out there and I counsel them, don't make promises you may not be able to keep, because it hurts both you. You have so much guilt then, and it hurts your loved one because there's just sometimes necessities. There's just impossibility of perhaps carrying out that wish. So what I tell caregivers is have the conversation thoughtfully, and as you said, hopefully you're having this conversation before the crisis hits, because it's so much harder after the fact. But have the conversation and say, okay, let's make a plan, Mom. And your mom may say, well, I definitely don't want to be in home. Okay, well, let's talk that through. And so, knowing about what caregiving may face, and it's both, as we're talking here, it's some of these tipping points, it's the cost factor. If your mom says, I need to stay at home, I don't want to be in a nursing home, that's all well and good, but does she have then the financial income to support perhaps at some point round-the-clock in-home care, which is, hugely expensive. But those are the things where the light bulb goes off then, and it's like, aha. So when we start to have these thoughtful conversations and really be practical about it rather than emotional, and say, I'm here to be your partner. Let's put a plan together. But we do have to have a plan because sometimes things change. And, again, Lori, you and I have both seen it personally as well as talked to so many caregivers. Caregiving is not it's not static. It doesn't stay in the same space throughout the duration of caregiving. Very often we start as caregivers in a very slow way. It's just running errands, maybe, scraping, shoveling snow out of the driveway, or, taking care of the leaves or home repairs, and it can start very simply. And then gradually, as your parent ages, it starts to take on more and more of your time, more and more of your emotional and physical abilities. And, we know the average duration for caregiving is 4.6 years, but my gosh, I've talked to so many caregivers who have been doing it now for 10 years or even 20 years. So it could be a very long journey, and that journey takes different steps and stages and phases, and you have to be aware of that. And so making a promise when your loved one is maybe a little bit healthier now and saying, yeah, we'll always keep you at home, Mom, that might be something that's practical, but it may not be practical in 10 years as her needs change, and you're not a professional. You're not trained as a nurse. You can't be diligent 24/7. My goodness, you've got to get sleep. So I think you bring up such an important point, and that is this whole conversation about caregiving that we all need to have.
Well, and, for Alzheimer's and dementia, the statistics are that the average care partner puts in, I think it was 21.9 hours a week. Now, how many people have that much extra time? Most of us are scrambling for an extra 15 or 20 minutes. But like you said, it kind of creeps up. So not only is it, physical abilities, emotional abilities, financial, capabilities, but it's time constraints too. And one of the vital questions that I think you have to ask yourself when you're feeling really guilty, and because guilt is usually wrapped pretty closely with caregiving. It
right
up there. It's doing the right thing, and it's just this bright little package sitting in front of you all the time. Is also ask when you've maybe made that promise of I'll never place you, or I'll never have somebody come into the home. I'll take care of you. It'll be me. It'll be only me. We can do this together. Also ask yourself, would your loved one want you to give up that much of your life, or to put your life or your health in jeopardy? And my answer, my guess to that is probably no. So when you're looking at that gift of guilt, that box sitting before you, look at it from all sides. Really, really take that whole person approach. And, the fear that comes out is, you can't do this to me and you promised. But there is a whole other side. And sometimes, we're able to explain that to the person that we're caring for them to understand. And other times, we're not in that position where they're going to be able to understand. But knowing in our own right that we have done everything that we can do that's fair to everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. And again, I find I write about this in my book. It's in a chapter called The Care Conversation. But I find that, caregiving is so emotional, and it brings up so many, that whole dynamic between you and your parent, and it's so difficult to navigate. But if you can try to make it as practical as possible, and again, the financial aspect of it often becomes an area that can be reasoned through. And so, as I said, mom might be very adamant that she wants to stay at home, but if you sit down with her and you show her what that cost is, and then you look at her nest egg and what she may have saved or what her long-term care plan and benefits say, all of a sudden it starts to, we help our loved ones see, oh, wow, this may not work, Yep. And so it's really that education process. And I really find that right now, at the age that many of us are, who are boomers, we are the educators about caregiving because we're facing it more and more. We're starting to learn more and more. Shows like what you do with Alzheimer Speaks and the blogs that you and I both write, we are trying to get as much good resources and information, into the hands of caregivers so that they can have these conversations and they can help their loved ones. And it's not just that emotional, yes, I'll do whatever you need. It's, okay, I want to do whatever you need, but let's take a look at what that means. And I think that's where the conversation has to turn. We have to start getting to that practical side of it for both the caregiver and the loved one's sake, to make it real.
Exactly. Well, why don't you give us another example of your tipping points? You kind of talked about physical. What about safety or behavioral?
Yeah, and I wanted to mention, too, in the article, if you go to nextavenue.org, you can read my article. In the physical area, another big one, and I won't go into it because we want to go through all these three buckets, but incontinence, which is the inability, obviously, to control, your urine flow, your bladder and bowel movements. It's a horrible topic, honestly. It's something nobody wants to face. No one wants to talk about. And yet it is a very, very common aspect of caregiving. And so if you are caring for a loved one at home, it's something you probably will face. And there are some great resources out there. One that I want to always do a shout-out to is the Caregiver Partnership, which offers so much great information. They have over 400 different types of adult diapers. And by the way, adult diapers doesn't sound great. That's something none of us want to think about. But there's such a variety of great stuff out there right now. Depend has wonderful things that look just like really stylish, kind of underwear for both men and women. So I want to encourage people to really look into it. You can get samples from them if you want to before you have to go out and buy a lot of these. But that's a big one that a lot of caregivers face in the physical bucket. When it comes to the safety challenges bucket, we talked a little bit about falls and the issue there. And, one of the things I did want to let people know is that, every 28 minutes, a senior dies from an injury from falling at home. Now, that's, again, a staggering statistic and not something we think about a lot. Falling with our older loved ones is so critical. Breaking a hip, or as we see, a fatality because they've fallen at home is just, it's just something we really need to be cognizant about. So, again, if you've got a parent or even parents who are both a little bit more frail, a little bit more, older, can't navigate as well, the risk of falling is very high, and you need to be aware of that. But in this bucket of safety challenges, one of the things I think, and it happens so often with people who are diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's, is the wandering issue. And, again, statistically we know that 60% of those who have Alzheimer's disease will have a tendency to wander. And this puts them at a huge risk because, again, if they wander out of the house and then they get confused and don't know where they're at, they could get lost. I know you said that you're expecting your first snowstorm today in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Think about if, a parent wandered outside of the house and you're at work and you don't know this, and all of a sudden, they're sitting in the snow all day or something. I mean, it's frightening to think about. But wandering is huge, and one of the things I wanted to let people know is that there's a lot of really great technology out there now, and you can find a lot of great gadgets and things that you can do to help prohibit, I guess, the wandering or keep your loved one safe. And one that I really love is from the Alzheimer's Association, and it's called Comfort Zone. And it's basically a GPS-enabled device, and I really like it because it is something, again, where you can both sit down. You can sit down with your loved one, and you can decide, okay. And this is, of course, if your loved one still has that cognitive ability to understand what their disease means. And so you say, okay, Dad, I know you really love walking to church every Sunday or going to the corner market to get your groceries every week. And, that's not too far, and it's a good physical exercise for you. So what you do is you set what they call a geofence. So it's a literal perimeter from the home base. And then if your loved one agrees, they can wear this device, and it's either it can be a little lavalier, it can be a belt clip, it can even be in your watch. There's other stuff out there that even has it embedded in your shoes that look like walking shoes, but it has a GPS on you. And so if you wander and you break that perimeter, and let's say you're the adult daughter, you're the caregiver at work, you will get an immediate text message or an email ping or whatever you set up letting you know the perimeter is broken, but also because of the GPS, you know exactly where your loved one is. And this is another issue. When our loved ones wander off, we don't know where they are. And so often the police are called in to help find them, which uses their resources. So this is, to me, this is the great thing about technology and caregiving that is starting to evolve out there to help us be better caregivers and help keep our loved ones safe.
Well, and that is so important because that is so scary, and there's lots of different types of GPS units out there. I know Verizon has one that they've rolled out. I know Tenactis has an app that you can put on an iPhone, which is a wonderful thing, and it does some other stuff too. But again, if somebody isn't going to hold on to that, it doesn't do you any good. So in the shoes is a great idea, and some of these other avenues. So you really have to, match up what is going to work best for your particular situation. And just because it works good for your friend doesn't mean it's going to be perfect for you, because this disease and the elements of it, they vary. And so, but it's great to share knowledge with people. Wonderful route to be able to go. How about on the behavioral side? Is there anything you want to touch base with on that for your tipping point?
I think that, there's a couple of things that happen in this whole bucket of behavioral challenges. And one is, aggressive behavior. Again, we see this a lot with people who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia, and it might be associated with something called sundowning, which, typically happens at dusk, and they become more paranoid, more aggressive. They can have outbursts. They can even become physically, almost abusive. And this is frightening. This is so frightening because, again, Alzheimer's is a disease which really does almost change your loved one into someone you may not even recognize or know. And it's so hard, I think, to face the fact that your mom is trying to beat on you because she has no idea what's going on inside her own mind. And this becomes really tough. And I've seen and talked with a lot of caregivers and some support groups, both with the veterans caregivers who are facing loved ones who come home with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or with Alzheimer's caregivers who face these issues of physical outbursts. And so, again, there's guilt that you might not be able to continue to care for them because of this. But let's face it, you can't put yourself at physical risk. And you don't have the skill set to cope both emotionally as well as physically with somebody who might have these types of outbursts. And so, it's really tough because, facing that is a difficult decision, but you have to also think about yourself and your own needs and what's best for both you and your loved one. So that's one. The other one that happens is just this whole failure to communicate if your loved one perhaps had a stroke or they've had throat surgery and they can't really speak. And so, that becomes a tipping point for caregivers because, again, you're not trained in how to communicate with them. So you have to find ways to get some training, and there are different organizations out there. There are certainly a lot of geriatric care managers and others that can help you understand, okay, your loved one's had a stroke. This is how you might be able to help communicate with them. And or that becomes the point where you do need more professional help because they're going to be the ones that can really identify how to get through to your loved one, how to understand the gestures or even just the eyes, look in their eyes and know what they're trying to get across to you. And so, these are areas where, again, communication, aggressive behavior, these become behavioral changes that we don't expect when we're caregivers that become a tipping point for us in that you can't just do it by yourself anymore.
Exactly. Well, great information on explaining what tipping points are and why they are so critical to all of us. What advice do you give caregivers about coping with tipping points? What are some major things they need to think about?
That's always the tough one because, again, as I said up front, every caregiving situation is unique. It's like snowflakes or fingerprints. Each one of our situations is going to be just unique to us. And so it's hard to say, well, you need to do this because everybody's going to hit that tipping point at a different point, a different time, if you will, during their caregiving journey. But what I say is, the guilt that you talked about earlier is something, it's a blanket that we wrap ourselves in when we become caregivers. I almost think about it as being a Girl Scout again, and it's the first badge that you get is the guilt badge when you become a caregiver because it is almost something none of us can avoid. You feel guilty for whatever reason, a million different things. So, trying to work through the guilt and trying to give yourself the pat on the back saying, listen, I'm doing my best. My priorities are in the right place. It's my safety, my loved one's safety, the ability for me to help them, even if it's not me personally giving the help or giving the care. I think you have to get to a point where you really work through that guilt. And I always find, again, support groups are amazing. I mean, the ability to talk to others who are in a similar situation, finding a good support group. If you don't feel like doing a support group in person, there are wonderful groups online. So it's a little bit more anonymous, and also you don't have to leave your home. You can just log in. And so finding those groups is critical, or even just having an outlet, and I call it the vault. And the vault might be your best friend, or it might be your sister, or it might even be a coworker who is very empathetic to your situation. It can also be a professional. It can be a therapist. It can be a counselor, but someone you can talk to, because when you keep it bottled up inside, this is where I see caregivers go down. Their own health tends to decline. You start to neglect yourself because you're so overwhelmed, and the guilt is eating you up, and it's causing more stress. Might cause you to either overeat or undereat, may lead to depression. I mean, all of these things are kind of the big traps that we can fall into as caregivers. So find support somehow. Don't do it alone, and that'll help you ease through this guilt. And it'll also give you great insights as to how to continue to care for your loved one. And I think we have to decide caregiving does not just mean that you're the one doing the hands-on physical care. Caregiving means you're the partner, and you're the one who is the advocate. You're the one who is the troubleshooter, the problem solver. You're the 007 of your caregiving situation. You come in and you figure out what is the best solution, and it doesn't always mean that you have to do it. The best solution might be finding great in-home care. It might be finding a great facility that knows how to manage, these wonderful memory care assisted living facilities out there. So it might be finding a really great place where your loved one becomes very happy. Joan London went through this and went through the guilt like all of us and found a wonderful home for her mom, which is more of it's just 6 to 8 people who live in this residential home. All the people there are trained in dementia care, but her mother is so happy. And she had to go through a series of these things to figure out the best solution, and I write about that. It's called the Goldilocks syndrome, so that's a whole other topic. But don't always feel that caregiving means you have to do it. You just have to be the one who helps come up with the solution. That's what I tell caregivers.
Well, and that's an excellent, excellent point. We're all such control freaks in this era and thinking that we have to do it all and, we have to control it all. And, there's a lot better solutions out there than just what our mind comes up with. And so, it's good to explore. And granted, your person probably the best, but that doesn't mean that there aren't resources that can help you, creatively come up with a new plan and be supportive and get you back, to your core relationship as well with your loved one. So, Sherri, thank you so much for sharing all this great information. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, there's a couple of ways. First of all, you can visit my website, which is caregivingclub.com. And we're also on Facebook and Twitter, and you can look at our videos on YouTube. And then if somebody wants to reach out to me personally, feel free to email me at Sherri, that's SHERRI, at caregivingclub.com. And I'll help you as best I can and get you to the right resources.
Wonderful. Well, Sherri, you're going to stay with us and help me proceed with the show here, but I want to go ahead and introduce our next guest here. I'm thrilled to death that we have Dr. Walter Greenleaf with us. And Dr. Greenleaf is the director of the Mind Division for the Stanford Center on Longevity, where he focuses on issues surrounding aging and the brain. He is trained as a research scientist with specific background in behavioral neuroscience. Previously to joining the Center on Longevity, Walter was the founder and CEO for several high-tech medical product development companies. Today, he's going to talk to us about a new Global Student Design Challenge, which was just launched, which will allow students to design products to allow people with early-stage cognitive impairment live safely and independently. So welcome, Dr. Greenleaf. How are you today?
I'm very good, Lori. Good. Pleased to be here with you.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're able to join us today. Can you tell us a little bit more about this Global Student Design Challenge?
Absolutely. Well, the overarching goal of the challenge is to encourage students who are in different fields. It could be the design field for designing new technology. It could be students, medical students. It could be undergraduates who have an interest. But in general, to encourage students to think about what might be needed for people with cognitive impairment and to generate some ideas. And then hopefully we can help those students and those ideas move forward and become actual solutions to help people.
Okay, wonderful. Can you give us a little bit of background about kind of the mission for the Stanford Center on Longevity for our audience?
Yes. Our center is focused on the fact that we are living a lot longer than our parents' generation and their parents' generation, and as a result, there's different issues facing us. One immediate issue, for example, is that there's a higher percentage of people who are living long enough that some of the cognitive impairments like Alzheimer's develop, and there's a higher percentage. But there's other issues related to the fact that we're all living many, many years longer than previous generations have. Such as issues involving financial security, planning for living a longer life, or issues involving mobility. In addition to some of the health-related problems that happen with cognition, people often lose their independence because of changes in their ability to get around. So our center focuses on helping catalyze research, catalyze discussion, addressing public policy, trying to help out in a variety of ways to address these emerging problems.
And Dr. Greenleaf, this is Sherri Snelling, and I'm so thrilled to be here to help interview you today. But I'm really, really interested in this program because I love to hear about these multi-generational efforts. And I'm wondering, with the students that are involved so far in your contest, are you seeing a change in how they perceive Alzheimer's and dementia? We know there's been such a stigma around the disease. Do you feel that this is really helping to expand, our understanding of what this disease is really all about?
Well, Sherri, I don't know yet. We just recently announced the contest, and there's a submission deadline of December 2nd for the first phase. So we haven't yet had the chance to see some of the ideas that the students will be generating. I'm pretty, just by word of mouth and a few of the people I've talked to, I think we will generate a lot of very exciting ideas. But I really don't have a good list of them yet for you.
And what made you choose Alzheimer's specifically as something to build your design contest around?
Well, I should clarify, it's not Alzheimer's specifically, it's cognitive impairment. So, of course, Alzheimer's is a big part of that. But there's other dementias, other issues involving memory loss and ability to navigate around the world that Alzheimer's is part of, but there's other issues like Lewy body disease and vascular dementia that hopefully these technologies will also help with. And in terms of what made us choose cognitive impairment in general, well, we're going to be doing this contest every year. And this year was our inaugural contest, and we chose cognitive issues just because they're so significant with the aging process. But I think next year we'll probably be addressing a similar issue like mobility, for example. But we want to start with cognition because it's important.
Wonderful. Well, great.
Well, this is Lori again. I'm thrilled that you're starting with the cognitive because I think it is so significant and such a high need out there. And I'm glad to hear that you're focusing on a wider span than just Alzheimer's because so many people out there have multiple and dual diagnoses as well, and everybody needs help. And I think there's keys into all these pieces that can overlap. I see that all the time just through social media, people sharing information going, oh, well, that would work for me too, or maybe we could modify that, and that'll really work for me. So I think it's very, very exciting what all you're up to. How do people participate in the design contest?
Well, a good way to start is to go to our website. All the information on how to participate is there, but which is, let me read it out for you now if that's okay. It's
sure.
Longevity 3, LONGEVITY 3, Stanford, STANFORD.edu/design challenge / and that'll take you to the website, or probably searching for Stanford Design Challenge for cognitive impairment would find it also. And there, people participate by initially signing up, and then that puts you into communication with us, and we can send you further information. And then there's a place to submit your ideas. There's two phases to participating. One is to come up with some general ideas that you could elaborate through a sketch or through a short video describing your idea, or typing it up, and enough information for the judges to get a sense as to what you're trying to propose and how it might be helpful for someone with cognitive impairment. The deadline for submitting those initial ideas is December 2nd. After that, there's a preliminary review, and we select some semifinalists to go forward. We provide them with a couple $1,000s to help elaborate their idea, and then there's another process of working on the idea and submitting it for final review, and then we announce the winners in April.
Now, do people have to be a student of Stanford, or is this open to anybody?
Oh, this is open to anyone, and people can apply as a team also. As a matter of fact, I think that many of the ideas will be submitted as a group effort. The principal requirement, though, is that someone on the team has to be a student. And they could be a high school student, they could be an undergraduate student, they could be a graduate student, a medical student, but there does have to be a student as part of the team. And we look for the student to be the one to present the idea. But a team could work on the idea together.
Right. And what, Dr. Greenleaf, what in April, what would the finalists get? Are you going to help, do something with the ideas, or what's going to happen when they do, you pick your finalists?
Well, they'll receive a $10,000 award. We'll also, they'll get a lot of exposure in introduction to potential research groups or development groups that can help move the idea forward.
Great.
So we'd like this not only to catalyze thinking, but actually result in some products that will help caregivers or help people with cognitive impairment directly.
And that was going to be one of my other questions is part of this effort incorporating the caregivers themselves and not just the patient who may be diagnosed or have the cognitive impairment? Do you incorporate that?
Absolutely. It's to make the life of someone who has cognitive impairment better and facilitate independence. And as you know, a big part of that is also making sure that the caregivers are helped and supported, and it's an ecosystem. And so supporting caregiving is a very important part of this. I should also mention that we have a section on our website for community input where we've asked for feedback from people who work in the field of cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's, or people who might have cognitive impairment, or people who are studying cognitive impairment, anyone who has an interest to submit suggestions, so that if someone out there is a good designer but they really don't know exactly what someone might need, they can look at this community input and get some ideas.
Well, that is
great.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It really is great. I hope that you will, keep us posted here at Alzheimer's Speaks, because we'd love to help promote and facilitate discussion on this, and we'd love to have you back when you announce your finalists, if you're going to announce finalists, and then, at the end, who won the project itself. But anything that we can do to help support you, we would love to do that.
Well, thank you. I think our objective here is to get the word out and to encourage a lot of dialogue about this. And I think in that sense, we definitely will need your help and definitely keep you posted.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Sherri, do you have any last questions for Dr. Greenleaf before we let him go?
No, I just want to applaud this inaugural effort, Dr. Greenleaf. We look forward to many years of this contest. It just sounds wonderful.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the wonderful work that you both do, too.
Well, great. You have a wonderful day. And again, for people who want to find out more information about the Global Student Design Challenge, you can go to longevity and then the number 3.stanford.edu/design challenge, and there you will get tons of information. And again, thank you, Dr. Greenleaf and Stanford, for all you're doing. Really appreciate you moving things forward and assisting all of us in terms of being creative and finding different types of products to assist those in need.
And Lori, I should mention one last thing. We have a partner in this effort too, the organization Aging 2.0, and they've been instrumental in helping us shape this contest and get the word out and bring in the community. So they're a wonderful partner here, and I encourage your listeners to check out Aging 2.0 also.
Wonderful. Can you tell people briefly what they do in a nutshell?
Sure. Cathie and Stephen are out there trying to encourage new technology for helping with all aspects of aging, much like we are at the Center on Longevity. But they're putting together a lot of public meetings and events. One of the things they've started is what they call the Generator, which is a technology accelerator, where they're taking startups that are interested in developing technology for the aging market, and they actually help them by connecting them with potential investors, by connecting them with mentors, and helping them start the process of building a business and getting a product out. I couldn't applaud them more.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. This is great information, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.
I'm going to go ahead and do kind of our mid-program break and just give you some updates here. Our last radio show, if you didn't hear it, you need to go back and listen to it. All of the shows are podcasts, so they're archived. But this last show on October 29th was titled Life and Death with Dementia, the Taboo Talk. And it's really quite interesting to hear people's perspectives on this topic. And I was so proud of our audience, both on the radio but on the internet as well, in all the various groups. People were so respectful in terms of conversation, even if they didn't agree. And to me, I just felt so proud that people were listening. They don't have to agree, but people were listening to one another's needs and being real respectful. So I would encourage you to listen to that show. Our next show on Tuesday will continue on with the Alzheimer's and Caregiving National Month, and we were going to have a loaded show there. We're going to be talking about initiatives for global change. Our last Dementia Chats was on the 22nd, and that was really interesting. Our experts diagnosed with dementia talked about what it's like for them, what they would like to see change for businesses and communities to become dementia-friendly. A lot of great specific examples and how it impacts them and their caregiver, and how little teeny changes that don't have to cost much can have a big impact. Great training video and informational video on that. And again, you can find that on alzheimersspeaks.com. Go to our About section, then down to Dementia Chats. They're all archived. I don't quite have all of them loaded, but this one is, the last several months are up there. On the blog, we've had lots of discussion from promoting this Let's Talk on Tuesday with Sherri. There was a blog post on 10 things to discuss with your parents' doctors. I'm doing quite a few talks in the next couple of weeks with Keystone Communities, which is free. So I'm heading to, I was in Prior Lake last night. I'm going to Highland tonight, Mankato, Minnesota tomorrow, and then Faribault, Roseville, and Eagan. So kind of doing this tour. If you're in any of those areas, please feel free to RSVP and come. There was also an article on Alzheimer's-inspired tattoos. So if you've gotten a tat because of dementia, they want to see it and promote it. Our intern, Michelle, wrote a blog post called Happy Hour that's quite cute. And then I reposted information on the Boomer Voices with Verizon, lots of different tech products out there that can help you as a caregiver or as a person living with dementia. And then I would be amiss if I didn't mention the free webinar coming up November 7th, which is this Thursday, with the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. Dr. Dharma, the founder, will be on along with actress and health activist Muriel Hemingway and myself. It'll be 90 minutes. It's free. They've actually had to expand how many people they can hold because we've got so many people signed up for this thing. It's going to be a fabulous, I think, really informative webinar, and it's celebrating 20 years that they have been in the forefront of prevention. And so again, I would encourage you to go ahead and sign up, and you can either go to the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation homepage, or you can just scroll down the blog and you'll find information about that, or you can go to our homepage on our website and find information there as well. Again, if you're just tuning in, and looking for an Alzheimer's association in your community, I suggest you go to Alzheimer's Disease International. They are the association of all associations around the world. You'll also find the latest statistics and resources listed there. And don't forget about the Lewy Body Association, the Frontal Temporal Lobe, and the National Aphasia Association. Those are all different types of dementia associations that can support you. And if you're a business or community and want to get behind the Purple Angel Project, which is the new symbol for the globe for dementia, reach out to me. I would be more than glad to assist you with that. And the last one I'm going to mention is the Alzheimer's Studies Group, which has a trial on with the Tau trial that you can sign up for, and you can go there by just going to alzheimersstudies.com. And oops, I got to sneak in one more. And of course, have to thank Sharecare and Dr. Oz and Jeff Arnold for developing such a wonderful resource online for health and wellness. If you have not checked out Sharecare, please go and do that. I think you'll be extremely impressed. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next guest, who is, how do I describe Cathie? She is another person who I have not met personally, but I have talked to over the years, feel like she is just a kindred spirit and a kind soul doing miraculous things with her life. And Cathie Borrie has degrees in nursing, public health, and law, but nothing prepared her for the 7 years she spent caring for her mother. Along this difficult but unexpectedly fascinating journey, she discovered that recording conversations with her mother, writing a book, and learning ballroom dance were ways to tell both her mother and her mother's story. Her lyrical memoir, The Long Hello, was launched at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City in 2010. And experts have shortlisted this 3 times in the CBC Literary Awards. Her memoir is being adapted for stage by Cathie and Vancouver award-winning director-playwright James Fagan Tate. Currently, Cathie performs the text internationally, and she's also available as a solo artist concert, and the concerts are accompanied by an actor and a cellist. Cathie is the author of another book called Looking Into Your Voice as well. Let's find out more of why Cathie feels out of memory loss comes the unforgettable. And I just think that that's just a beautiful way to phrase things. Out of memory loss comes the unforgettable. Welcome, Cathie. How are you doing?
Good. Oh, hi, Lori, and hello also to Sherri. I know we haven't met, but I think we've sort of met in another dimension, perhaps a spiritual dimension, because I feel I know you so well.
I think
I feel the same. As I was reading through all of your information, Cathie, I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sorry, I have a bit of a cold. I'd like everybody to think I've just got a sexy voice, but I've got a cold. Well, let's go with the sexy.
That's right. That's right. We won't visualize the sniffles and the Kleenex as you're talking here.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be part of this group today. It's such a great culture change group, and I know Dr. Daniel Potts and Ellen Potts and all the wonderful work that I've been a little tiny bit involved in with their memory preservation project, but it's just an honor to listen to the other speakers. Thank you so much for involving me.
Well, Cathie, can you tell us, where this phrase came? Out of memory loss comes the unforgettable.
Well, it is a great line. I wish I'd thought it up. I'm plagiarizing. Dr. John Killick from the United Kingdom was one of my cover blurbs on my small book, which is a book of conversations called Looking Into Your Voice, and he wrote the front cover blurb for that. And I thought, wow, could you have a better phrase? Could you have a more positive anti-stigma phrase? Out of memory loss comes the unforgettable. And I think that what that represents for me, and I'm sure the other people who are part of this sort of anti-stigma culture change in Alzheimer's and dementia, is that we think that there's nothing going on and it's a dead end and people are fading out at the long goodbye, the endless forgetting, such negative terms. But in fact, if one really listens and stays present, there are unforgettable beauties, unforgettable insights to be gained from paying attention and not giving up on people with dementia. You know, it's the same sort of thing that happened, the stigma with well, what I really think it is also is a stigma against aging at all. But it now, of course, it's much worse because of the Alzheimer's and dementia, the high prevalence of that. But the whole idea is not to step aside from people who have this experience, but to fully engage with them.
I agree. I totally agree. Now, you know, Cathie, one of the things that I just so admire about you is your willingness to be so honest and so vulnerable in your memoirs. It strikes a chord, I think, with I have to imagine with anybody who reads your writing. Can you tell us, was it difficult for you to write this kind of book?
Oh, that's a neat question. You know something, Laurie? I was so lucky because I got accepted into a writer's studio here in Vancouver, and so we went to classes every day and learned many things. But when we did our writing, all we paid attention to was the words, the language, how it was placed on the page. Nobody ever commented on the sort of vulnerable aspects. And the whole idea was to write honestly, because nobody wants to read anything where they feel there isn't being given a very, very clear picture. And that's why I set the book, which was really anchored in the Alzheimer's years, but involved a whole bunch more of our family stories to put it all in context. But it really wasn't until it was published and people came up to me and said, "Oh, my goodness, how could you be so honest?" And I'd sort of forgotten that I had been. So it wasn't hard to write it because, of course, I'd already lived it. And then afterwards I thought, oh, goodness me, did I really put that on the page? But, that's what people want. They want to hear the truth. And so do I as a reader. I want to hear the truth. The whole truth, the good and the bad and the ugly and the beautiful. So it wasn't as hard as one would think.
Well, I echo what Laurie said. I think that there's such courage in writing so openly and really kind of raw, emotion. But that is what helps motivate us to either change or embrace or understand. Or I'm sure so many people who have read your book said, "Oh my gosh, I felt that way too," or I can see that as part of my experience. Cathie, I was just really fascinated. You talk about so many different topics in the book, but the one about the ballroom dance lessons you took, I've written a lot about music therapy with dementia patients and seeing how much the arts, whether it's the dance or music, can move us and help us. So how did that impact you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yes, it was really very beneficial to me as a caregiver, and because my mom was so musical, she would get to watch the videos and correct me. "Oh, dear, that your little turn there was a little bit too fast or a little off time." Of course, she was always right. But the main thing I think that I learned from ballroom dancing was, and it's sort of a metaphor, but I learned how to follow instead of lead. And, I'm an alpha dog. I love to lead. And I had to learn that there was great power in following. It's not subservient. And great peace and sort of almost a meditative state to follow and not to lead. And I pretty sure that I was able to apply that to caring for my mom, so that the whole idea in caregiving became for me, which was very difficult, and often I didn't succeed at this, but many times I did, was to follow my mom wherever she was going and not to prejudge that or try to bring her back to where I wanted her to be because it was easier for me. So the whole idea is, I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to follow you, whoever you become and wherever you go. And so the dancing became a metaphor. It was also, of course, a great release for me physically, mentally, spiritually, and intellectually to be able to go and move to music on the floor, which is, of course, very therapeutic and very, very pleasurable. But the bottom line is I think I got better at following where my mom was going.
Well, and I love this example of you as a caregiver really finding outlet for yourself and in such a wonderful way. And I love the whole thing about, applying that then to your caregiving. I think sometimes we get so focused and involved in our caregiving, you have to step out of it almost sometimes to see it in perspective. Was it hard for you to pull yourself out and be able to go and do something for yourself, like the dance lessons?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll just be terribly honest. I was really bad at not distancing myself, but taking time to do things for me. I was terrible at it. I just wanted to be with her all the time. I felt guilty. I felt a huge sense of duty and of love. But the dance to me was, it was exercise. I was learning something new, and I didn't feel guilty doing it. I felt a real dissonance when I went to the dance studio. I wasn't able to really share my story with anyone. It just made no sense, and it would take me a few minutes to really go from the world of caregiving to the world of dance. But once I got into it, then you sink into it like you might into singing or into art, or even to a sport or something. And so once I got there and shut down my noisy mind, then I was able to immerse myself entirely.
Wonderful.
I also drank a lot of red wine.
I love that.
I mean, I have to put that on the floor.
Well, which is actually has a health benefit, right? So we can put that out there.
My antioxidant fix.
Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Now, Cathie, you really learned to meet your mother in her own little reality, her world, and let her lead the conversation. One, was that difficult for you to take on that approach, and why did you decide to try that?
Well, I realized that my reactions to her changing mind weren't working. So, for example, we'd go by a drugstore that had been there many years, and she'd say, "Oh, look at that lovely new store." And when this was earlier on, and I would say, "Oh, that's not new," thinking I had to reorient her. Excuse me. And I saw the dismay on her face and the embarrassment. I thought, what am I doing? Is it so hard to say? Well, Mom, that's a new store. What a good eye you have. That looks great. We should go there. So really, I realized how toxic it was to go up against her reality. And so I tried. I mean, I wasn't always successful because in human nature we want to make everything just the way it was. And so I realized that when I, basically shut up and let her take the lead, things went much better. So it wasn't hard except for my own ego. When I could get over my own ego, it was really quite fun. And that's why I ended up taping her conversations, because the things she said were just insightful and unexpected and funny and poetic. So, I felt she had something to say that was worth listening to, and that when I started to go down that road, things got a lot easier.
It's amazing when you said to let go of your own ego. I know that for me, that wasn't an easy thing for me to do. That wasn't a normal thing, because I always thought I was this really compassionate person, and I didn't really think that I was that big of a control freak. But looking back, it was like, woo-wee, who is this woman? And what's really driving her. And I always thought I always referred to myself as organized, and instead of kind of this perfectionist. And when I was able to let go of my ego, I was shocked at what was before me that I was missing. It's a really good point.
It's a beautiful point you make. And, really it's when you finally get to that place, even though it's a little bit of an up and down experience, it's so peaceful and restful just to stop who you're being and just totally let that person be who they want. And it's really actually quite beautiful experience. It's very Zen-like, I think, and very, very Zen-like. You just accept and you're in that moment, but you do it moment by moment because you can't. Sometimes you just don't have the strength to do it and you slip. But it's a much better way to go, at least to try to go that way.
Exactly. Now, Cathie, I want to be respectful of your time because we've only got a minute left, and we can have you on a little bit longer to kind of finish a couple other questions if you have time. But if you need to scoot, I want to make sure that we wrap you up and don't cause you to be late to your next appointment.
No, I've got a little extra time. I'm enjoying myself. Don't make me hang up, Lori.
Okay. Well, Sherri, do you want to throw a question at her?
Yeah, you said something, Cathie, that really resonated with me early on when we started talking. You said, don't give up on people. And I think I've talked to so many caregivers like yourself, and whether it's Alzheimer's disease or autism, it's amazing to me how friends and even sometimes family members can just turn away or fall away because they can't deal, they can't cope. And so, you write and talk about family and friends who started to write your mother off. Tell me about this, and how did you navigate through that?
Well, I've thought about that quite a bit then and now and since. And I think really it's a very common phenomenon for people to distance themselves with anything that makes them uncomfortable. So if people have, say, MS or some sort of chronic disease, it's not uncommon for the friendship circle just to diminish and practically nobody left at the end. I think it's because they're full of fear, they find it depressing, they don't know what to say. Those are things that are understandable, but they're very egocentric. So it takes courage to stay on board. But I think that that's our human duty to stay on board. And when we do, we find that there's much to be enriched. So you can't force people to do it. I couldn't force people to do it. I was very disappointed that when they didn't. But I understand it, but I don't accept it. It's not good behavior. It's not good human kindness behavior. It's very common.
Did you find, I talked to a couple of caregivers who said, once I started to really explain my loved one's disease or disorder and not just tell them, oh, my son has autism or, oh, my mom has Alzheimer's, but once I really started to get into what it meant and what my life was like, some of those people then started to turn that corner and become more empathetic. Did you find that?
Gee, maybe I didn't do such a good job at explaining it.
Well,
no, not really. Oh gosh, both Mom and I, she was and I am quite a private person, so I wasn't about to just sort of get into that conversation with just anybody. And there were a few people who, stepped to the plate, but, I have to say, not very many. And I just feel that they couldn't cope with it. I even had one person say, I'm sorry, I don't visit anymore, I can't do it. But I found I could at least accept the honesty of that.
Right.
And the other people, you're missing out when you don't step to the plate with people who are suffering, no matter what they're suffering from.
Right. So who was there for you? Who was kind of either your rock or your vault, or what helped you?
My dance was actually my rock, one of my main rocks. And another thing I did that was just so helpful is I went to see a counselor who was actually an academic professor who studied midlife children looking after their elderly parents. That was her whole research emphasis for many, many years, and she also was a family therapist. So I went to her with the very express purpose of getting homework every few weeks to figure out how I could better deal with this. And because she had studied this really, really well and knew what she was talking about, that was extremely helpful because there was nothing I couldn't say. And I think that was a really good idea, and I was really fortunate to have found her. But mostly it was a lonely little pattern because we didn't, there was just the two of us. There was no other family. That can be a benefit. That can be a benefit and a disadvantage, just like having 5 siblings can be a benefit or a disadvantage.
Right. But I do think, again, the great message is that you found some outlets. You found a way to help learn more about how to cope through the professional help that you got through the professor, but also your outlet with dance. I just encourage caregivers who are listening, don't isolate yourself. Find something like Cathie did. It's just so important.
I agree, and it could be something as simple as joining a volleyball team or a walking club. It's an hour or something, but just get out and move. I think you should move. I think the physical exercise is very, very important. Click in those endorphins.
Right.
However you can.
Cathie, in wrapping up, can you tell people how this book can help them deal with dementia?
Sure. The only way I really know that is by my readership or the people that come to my concerts giving me feedback. And that is that for those who have gone through the experience, they feel validated is an odd word, but they feel they've been understood. And those about to go through it or going through it tell me that really it provides almost a compass for navigating these tricky waters. So that's the kind of feedback I normally get.
Okay. And how do they reach you, Cathie?
I think the easiest way, Laurie, is off my website, which is CathieBorrie.com, CathieBorrie.com, and that you can also contact me on that site, and you can watch if you like. If you're a dog lover, it's a very good idea to go to my YouTube channel, and I'm not going to give anything else away.
I love that teaser.
Oh, it's very fun. And also the other thing, Laura, I'd like people to know is that I do concerts based on the text. I do them all over the world, first launched at MoMA in New York City, but sometimes I do them solo. I recently did one solo, and other times I do it accompanied by musicians and even a gospel choir. So that's, entertainment, when you think about it, going to a play or a film really can change how you feel about something. And that's why we're also adapting it for stage, trying to reach a larger audience with an honest but hopeful message.
Wonderful. Well, Cathie, thank you for all you do and all you are continuing to do. I need to pull in our next guest here, which is very interesting because Dr. Daniel Potts and Ellen are with us, and I know that you worked on a project with them as well, so this is just kind of apropos to have this flow so smoothly. Do you want to speak to a little bit about what you did with them, and then I'll go ahead and
I think they're best able to do that, but I was a part of a film that they were doing regarding the honoring of people with dementia, and so I'm going to stop talking, which is not easy for me to do, so that you can get on to those lovely people.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Cathie, and I look forward to having you back on the show again.
Oh, you too. Bless all of you. Thank you so much. Love you very much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Cathie.
Bye.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next guest, Dr. Daniel Potts, who is a noted advocate, author, educator, and champion of dementia patients and caregivers. He is the founder and president of the Cognitive Dynamics Foundation, and he's a neurologist at the Tuscaloosa Veterans Administrative Medical Center and the associate clinic professor at the College Community Health Science of the University of Alabama. He also was selected as the 2008 Donald M. I hope I'm not going to cremate this name too much, Palacuzzi Advocate of the Year by the American Academy of Neurology. Dr. Potts seeks to improve the quality of life for persons with dementia and their caregivers primarily through innovative approaches incorporating expressive arts and person-centered care. He also has experienced this disease through the eyes of his father, and his wife, Ellen Potts, Woodward Potts, is also with us, and she is a blogger for mariashriver.com. Together they published a pocket guide for the Alzheimer's caregiver. And they also have other books which include The Turning Time, The Broken Jar, Soul Fire, End of the Day, Verses of Recovery, and Neurology for the Boards. These two are really quite pioneers in terms of their work with dementia. So I want to welcome both Dr. Daniel Potts and Ellen. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Well, great. Daniel, are you with us? We'll see if we've got him with us. Dr. Potts, are you with us? He's showing up, and I'm kind of hearing something, but he's not connecting. So, Ellen, you might be running the show here. We'll have to see how it goes.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
We're just happy to be here.
Yeah, it looked like he had gotten bumped off the show. You know what? Let me try another. It looks like he's showing up here twice. Nope, no, he just dropped off. Let me try one other thing here. Nope, he's just on here once now again. So, Daniel, if you're listening, if you want to hang up and call back in, we'll see if we can get a better connection with you, because for whatever reason, we're not able to hear you right now. Ellen, I want to, I think what I'm going to also do is pull in another guest of ours today who is working on a project with you, Alan Brandano of The Voice.
Al Brandano, yes.
Yes, of The Voice Library. And I'm going to let you go ahead and maybe kind of cue him up a little bit, and we'll see what happens there. Al, are you with us?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Good, good, good. And Daniel, I'm going to see if you're here.
Hello, Lori and Sherri. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, we got you this time. Yeah.
Great.
So we're doing
Thank
good.
you so much. I've had some technical difficulty on the phone here. I've been listening on the phone for about 30 minutes, but somehow I got disconnected right before I punched in. So sorry about that.
Oh, no, not a problem, not a problem. Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about your project with Al and the Voice Library? And I didn't really do much of an introduction for him, so if you want to go ahead and give people a little bit of background, that would be great.
Absolutely. First of all, let me just say how honored we are to be back on your show and how much we appreciate what you all do to raise awareness. And Cathie talked about culture change, and that's exactly what you promote. And I agree with everything everybody said today. It is just so wonderful to hear the kind of caregiving advice that you all give. Let me tell you just a little bit about what we've been fortunate enough to work with Al and Lavanda Wagenheim on, who I'll tell you about in a minute. Because of what happened to Dad, Dad had Alzheimer's disease, Lester Potts, and became an artist in the throes of Alzheimer's disease, having never painted before. So as we walked the course of Dad's 7 years with Alzheimer's disease, with my mother, of course, who was the primary caregiver, we were given hope and inspiration out of the life of the very one that was afflicted. And so that has become really an inspirer and motivator of us to listen, like Cathie said, a different way, because individuals who are afflicted with Alzheimer's have stories to tell, as we all know, and they can still tell them if we'll listen in the right way. So somebody offered Dad a paintbrush, realizing that he couldn't use a hammer and nail anymore, and lo and behold, he painted his life story for us in watercolor art over about 4 years. And so we were so inspired by this that it literally changed the course of our lives, and we very much believe in storytelling and the importance of that in Alzheimer's care, not only for caregivers but for persons with the disease and for their loved ones. So we had the opportunity to get connected with Al Brandano of the Voice Library a couple of years back, and have just been really taken with what Al's organization does. The Voice Library preserves audio memories of really anybody who would like to preserve them, and they create an online library for folks so that they'll always have access to those memories. And Lavanda Wagenheim, who is the International Baccalaureate Coordinator here for the Tuscaloosa Magnet Middle School here in Tuscaloosa, and also a member of our board at Cognitive Dynamics, is a wonderful educator who has also been touched by this disease and who wanted to make a difference. So we all teamed up, and Lavanda wrote a curriculum which is Common Core aligned, meeting the Common Core national requirements for education initiatives. And this is a curriculum that combines memoir, life story preservation with Alzheimer's awareness for middle school students. And this was really Al Brandano's idea, and we unveiled the curriculum last year in Tuscaloosa, and it went over very, very well. And we're honored to be able to try to offer this nationally. We feel like it's unique, and it not only raises Alzheimer's awareness, but it also preserves stories, and it promotes intergenerational relationships, we think. We've all got to honor each other's stories, and we feel like that makes life a lot more interesting and beautiful. So that's kind of a summary of where we are with Let Me Be Your Memory.
Okay, wonderful. Al, I'm going to go ahead and pull you in and see if there's anything else that you kind of want to add to what Daniel was just talking about.
I think what Dr. Potts is, one of the exciting parts about working with Dr. Potts and Lavanda and our whole crew is that, on the pioneering end, we believe, and we've had this discussion at length, that for Alzheimer's awareness, we need to really do something different. Everyone has pink on. You can't go anywhere, watch football, baseball. Everyone has pink on. Why not purple? And in order to do that, we have to think outside the box, maybe really far outside the box to make that happen. And the way we're doing it is, I think, the most natural and human way. It's interesting, when we started the Voice Library, we're the first really innovators that allow people to access and really change the paradigm from accessing the stories anytime, any place in the world, just by a simple phone call and our online access. So we've opened it up so that you can be driving in your car right now, dial your 800 number, put in your family passcode, and bingo, you get to hear Grandma, Grandpa, those fishing stories, maybe your daughter reading Goodnight Moon, now she's 25 years old. All those things are there and now available to you. Never happened before. And to be able to work with Dr. Potts and Lavanda on something like this was just a natural for us. And I think, this type program put into schools and having the ability to be able, for any school in the country now, to contact us, and I think Dr. Potts will talk a little bit more about that, through the Rocket Hub program that we're doing right now. Any school in the country, any organization in the country now can have just what we duplicated, at Lavanda's school in Tuscaloosa, anywhere in the world now. So we have the ability to make Alzheimer's and make the understanding and the story of it and the passion of it and the hardships and the caregivers and everything that goes with it in a memoir project that's really simple and easy for students to understand. We're not pushing on that scary end where someone's saying you're going to lose your grandmother and lose your grandfather, your aunt or uncle or brother. What we're saying is this is a memoir program that softly introduces and teaches people about Alzheimer's in the very end. And I think the way the whole program came together is just amazing.
I think it sounds absolutely fantastic, and I don't think we have enough of this kind of stuff going on. I don't know if you're familiar with the Jiminy Wicket program with James Creasy, but he plays croquet intergenerational, and the kids just have a blast with this, and so do the people with dementia. I mean, it's just such a beautiful thing, and then they go off and they start talking and sharing and telling stories, and I think it really is going to be our younger generation that helps us break down the barriers and get this disease out of the closet and into the living rooms, so that we can have conversations without fear. So I thank you guys all for the work that you're doing.
Well, and
Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just things for us, and just recently unlocked. It really became an emotional experience for me. Was to watch, or not watch, but to listen to. We working with some caregivers. This gentleman happened to be a World War II vet and had been in later stage of dementia, but he knew, he remembered exactly that time in his life, and he knew what it smelled like, tasted like. He knew everything about that stage in his life. And his grandchildren, everyone kind of shied away from him when they came to family parties and everything. And it's not until the time his wife and the caregiver got together and they captured that story of what he remembered in World War II. And then when his grandchildren heard him, they see him and feel him in a different way now. And that's the amazing part of unlocking stories. And that woman came to me later in tears, and almost, quite frankly, I was too, basically saying, my whole family sees my husband differently now. Because before, he's not shunned, he's not locked in that corner anymore. They see him in a different light, and it was just an amazing and incredibly moving experience for me and for everybody there.
Well, and I was going to say, I'm so fascinated. So often we turn to, educational programs and good information and good resources, but the impact of using artistic ways to open up dialogues and open up understanding is fascinating to me. And I don't know which one of you wants to address that, but I'm just feeling like there's such strength in doing and power in doing these types of programs. Can you talk a little bit about why these things work so well?
Well, Sherri, I'm going to ask to bring Ellen in here with this, because we have all experienced this as a family, and the power of art and creativity in any form, especially when combined with reminiscence, it just brings out the essence of that person.
I would just say, this is Ellen. When I was in high school, I had an experience where I was told by my history teacher, go find an older person and interview them. And, being a teenager at the time, I rolled my eyes and, did what I was told, but I wasn't very enthusiastic about it. And the person that I chose to interview was my Presbyterian pastor in Huntsville, Alabama. And this gentleman was older at the time, and my parents knew this. They were the ones who had suggested that I interview him. But he grew up in Holland and had been a member of the Dutch resistance against the Nazis during World War II. And here I had this mild-mannered Presbyterian pastor who was basically a spy, during, and let me tell you, he and his wife would chime in also. She was also Dutch. And they told me stories that would curl my hair. And that really, and were just so amazing that these people had lived such incredible lives, and yet here they were as a mild-mannered pastor and his wife in Huntsville. But, that showed me early on the power of learning history from the people who experienced it. We had another situation where we do a wonderful course at the University of Alabama called Art to Life, where students are paired with people who have Alzheimer's disease in the community, the people who have Alzheimer's given art therapy, and the students document the life story of the people with Alzheimer's disease. There was a one little lady that we hesitated to even include because we thought, well, maybe her disease process is too advanced. But when the students came to visit, she was very withdrawn still. But one of her daughters had the incredible idea of bringing out her wedding dress. This woman who was withdrawn and would answer people in monosyllables saw her wedding dress, and it was like she came alive. She suddenly started talking about her wedding day, how much she loved her husband, the problems fitting the dress, the things that, the cousin who arrived late, all of the different things that she remembered about her wedding day that, her daughters had never heard. And it was just such a beautiful experience to see how, bringing out a familiar object, telling familiar stories, can really help us connect with people who have Alzheimer's disease that, they may not be able to hold a conversation about what they did today or what they had for breakfast. They may not remember those things, but if you can find the keys to unlock the memories, the flow of stories can come forth, and it is just a beautiful thing to watch, and it gives families tools by which they can connect with their loved ones.
Well, and I think so often we overlook the power of these types of storytelling and arts. I have to tell you, obviously I, learned about the Holocaust in school and knew details of World War II and all of that, but it wasn't until just really a few years ago, I was in Washington, D.C., I had a few extra hours, I went over to the Holocaust Museum, and which is, by the way, fascinating, one of the best museums I've ever, experienced, but the Shoah testimonies, and this sounds very similar to that, all of a sudden I saw this in a completely different light, and I really felt like the power of those stories made me fully understand, what that was all about.
Sherri, when I was a little boy, what I enjoyed doing more than anything was sitting around the old people and listen to them tell stories. And I just love to do that. And nowadays, gosh, it's hard for me to get my daughters to listen to me get through one story at the dinner table, and that's just a product of, I think, the world in which we live now. There's a disconnection, and oral storytelling is not as important as it used to be. But we're trying to honor that and teach some of these kids. The best thing about it, I think, is the relationship building, you see, between the elders and the kids. And this is a disconnect we have today. And LaVanda Wagenheim has done a great job, I think, in constructing this curriculum. Bless her heart, she's teaching today, and I think she's calling in. But she has built a beautiful curriculum that really meets so many different criteria of the Common Core guidelines. And these kids are going to get the opportunity for hands-on work and for interviewing and writing their own stories and learning about Alzheimer's disease in the process.
I'm going to jump in because we do have somebody on the line, and maybe this is her. So we have, let's see, I got to get my computer to work here and connect. We've got somebody from a 603 number. You are live on the air if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. From a 603 number?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. And who is with us?
This is Ellen Westbrook, another Ellen. I work with Al Brandano. And I just wanted to add, you all have been saying so powerfully, storytelling brings connection and responsiveness, and by that it reduces fear. It's in our DNA, it's in the wiring of our gray matter, and underlies how we make sense of the world. And it's an eons-old tradition that, as Dr. Potts said, has receded so in our modern lives, but I think we're seeing an explosion in so many contexts now of recognition of its importance, and so important for such emotional situations as coping with Alzheimer's. Because storytelling is talking, it's often conversation, like learning how to follow when ballroom dancing. It helps us learn how to respond to an immediate reality and helps us move together. And the Let Me Be Your Memory project promotes that across generations wonderfully.
Well, great. I appreciate you calling in today, Ellen. Thank you so much for sharing. We've also got a caller from a 205 number, and you are live on the air. 205 number. Do you want to join the conversation?
I guess that would be me. Can you hear me? This is LaVanda.
That's LaVanda.
Wonderful.
You broke away.
I'm here. I have been listening for a little while now. I wanted to talk about what we are actually doing with Let Me Be Your Memory in the next month. Our 8th grade language arts teacher who took my position when I left last November right when I was about to launch Let Me Be Your Memory, I was named the IB coordinator. So I stepped out of the classroom, unfortunately, but I had been doing this project in a smaller shape and form for years prior. So, and Dr. Potts had already known about that because I had taught his daughter in class. So what we did was just expand the program to include the voice library as part of the program, as part of the project. And I started to write the curriculum and started adding in all the parts that I knew would fit and work. But anyway, our teacher, Ms. Parker, is about to start the 8th grade Let Me Be Your Memory project next week, and they're going to focus on a memoir of wartime. If you know Night by Elie Wiesel,
yes.
It's a Holocaust memoir, and we'll be using that text, of course, in the program that we've developed. There are many texts to choose from, and then the students will be writing their own so-called war stories or stories of conflict, and they will also be interviewing their elders, and not necessarily having to do with war stories, but maybe a story of conflict in their lives. And it seemed to work really well last year, and the students are they're familiar with the program because they had done it as 7th graders, but now the focus has shifted. So you can see how Let Me Be Your Memory really can include so many different themes, but the basics are there. Let's learn the genre of memoir. Let's talk about personal narrative and what are the elements. Let's write our own, and then let's go to the community. Let's go to our elders. Let's find out what their stories are. Let's preserve them while we can, and make those connections, because I think that's the most important. To me, that is the most important element of the entire project.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, again, I think this is such a wonderful program that all of you are involved in. As Dr. Potts said earlier on, Alzheimer's disease is really the next big crisis, if you will, that we face in America because of the longevity and the prevalence, and being able to help younger generations understand it better seems to me to be just a fascinating and wonderful way to help us cope and support our society through this.
And there's one more part that we have included this year, and that is to visit the Caring Days adult daycare with our choir students who are singing a beautiful 3-part song having to do with memory. And we're going to sing it to the clients there at Caring Days and then participate in a Christmas art activity afterwards. So it really goes well with our community service component, which is a big part of the International Baccalaureate program. And they will be getting community service hours and making those connections there, too. So that is something that we're looking forward to November 19th to commemorate National Alzheimer's Month.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I have to thank you all for joining us. We've only got about 3 minutes left on the show. Ellen, anything else that you want to add?
Oops, we may have lost her.
Okay. How about you, Daniel? Anything you would like to add here?
Well, I just again want to reiterate how much we thank you and Sherri for having us on, and for all of the work that you're doing. We're believers, and y'all are too, that the more we hold hands and the more we connect in our efforts, we're all each playing an important role here, and the more we connect, the better. And I just want to reiterate a thing or two that Lavanda said. These individuals that have Alzheimer's disease have all lived rich life stories. They have experienced love. They've experienced loss. They've been heroes. They've been heroines. They need to be able to share that, and our world can't afford to lose one bit of that information. And so I think that the crisis that we have that you talk about, one of the things about that is that we're losing memories, and we can be the memory preservers of those individuals. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity there. We do have a Rocket Hub site, which is a fundraising site for Let Me Be Your Memory, and actually the web address for that is www.rockethub, that's all one word, rockethub.com, and then a /32008. So www.rockethub.com/32008, or you can go to Rocket Hub and type in "Let Me Be Your Memory." Now we'll pull up our site. You can learn more about it, and we hope to be able to take this to our nation's schools. It's an honor.
Well, it's an honor to have you all with us today, and again, I thank you for all the work that you're doing. Sherri, I thank you for co-hosting with me today. It was absolutely fabulous, and I loved it. And I do want to remind our audience here that we have our next show next Tuesday, which will be on the Global Initiative of Change. And pretty much everybody that we are working with is looking at this big picture movement, which is so much fun. The Dementia Chats, again, will be next Tuesday as well. That's November 12th already. And again, if you have not signed up for the free 90-minute webinar with the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, I would encourage you to do that. Dr. Dharma is the founder. He will be featured, as well as the actors and health activists, Meryl Hemingway and myself. You can find more information at www.alzheimerspeaks. Until then, thank you all for being part of the show, and I look forward to talking to you all again next week. Bye now.
Thanks so much, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesti here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.